Bruchim haboim, welcome everyone. We're about to begin Be'ezras Hashem together in Daf Nun Aleph, Amud Aleph, the third line, the new Mishnah. Says our Mishnah, Lo kisahu mi boid yoim. If a person did not cover, meaning he didn't insulate his pot before Shabbos, Lo yichasenu mishetechshach. He may not do so after Tzeis HaKoichovim, he can't do so on Shabbos. Here we're talking about, of course, a davar sheloi moisif hevel. Because a davar shel moisif hevel, that which intensifies the heat by insulating it, cannot be done even before Shabbos. Why we said it? Because the Gemara explains, because a person may then be insulating in something that has embers, and thereby he'll then come to stoke those embers and be over an Isur Deraisa of Havara. But here we're talking about even something that's not moisif hevel, it's just coming to be shomer, to preserve the heat. If that's done only before Shabbos, then it is mutter. On Shabbos, one cannot do so. Why? We explain, because if a person is enabled, was permitted to then insulate on Shabbos, he might realize that the pot that he wants to insulate is cool, and he'll come to reheat it and be over an Isur Bishul on Shabbos. So therefore, the Mishnah tells us only if he did so before Shabbos is it permissible. Says the Mishnah Vaiter, Kisahu v'nizgale muter lechasoisoi. If indeed he covered it, means he insulated before Shabbos, and then it became nizgale, it became then revealed, he's allowed to then again insulate it on Shabbos. The diuk over here, however, is that only if it was nizgale, that on its own it became revealed, uncovered. But if he actively uncovered it on Shabbos, he couldn't then recover it. Is that so? Tosfos is oimed on this. Take a look at Tosfos Dibra Masel Kisahu v'nizgale muter lechasoisoi. Says Tosfos Nira Lari Dehu adin de muter legaloisoi v'yadayim v'lasa v'lechasoisoi. Tosfos says it's equally mutter to re-insulate, to recover the pot once one took off the cover on Shabbos. What about the diuk? However, from the Mishnah, why didn't the Mishnah say this explicitly and say even when he takes it off biyadayim, you can go ahead and re-insulate it? Says Tosfos to explain v'hod denaka kisahu v'nizgale is mishum de nizgale mi ba'od yoim ayri. Because we're talking about where it was revealed, it became uncovered before Shabbos. Dumya de reisha, just like the reisha of our Mishnah states, lo kiso mi ba'od yoim, a person did not insulate it before Shabbos, he's not able to insulate on Shabbos. So parallel to that, as we're saying, if a person insulated it before Shabbos, and then it became revealed, it became uncovered again before Shabbos. That's the Chiddush. Therefore, he can go ahead and cover it even on Shabbos, reinstate on Shabbos. Even though it became uncovered before Shabbos, but since he covered it before Shabbos, he's allowed to then recover it on Shabbos. However, if he then uncovered it with his hands, actively uncovered it, then in order to then cover mishetechshach only after Shabbos start, then also lechasos, he's not able to do that. He's not able to recover it mishetechshach once Shabbos begins, because the dumya letchilas hatmonis it looks as if he's now beginning to cover anew, and therefore that would be also to then insulate on Shabbos. Back to our Mishnah, the Sefer of the Mishnah reads, Mimale es hakitoin, v'noisen etachas hakar, or etachas hakeses. If a person wants to then fill up a flask of cold water, and then he wants to, on Shabbos, put it underneath a pillow or some sort of cover, in order to then maintain the coolness of that water, he's able to do so. We don't say there's a problem of hatmana on the cold water. Now, how is it going to be maintaining its coolness? Normally, when you cover it up with a sheet or a pillow, you're going to go ahead and heat it. So we're talking about over here when there's felt, that he's putting it inside of this pillowcase, and thereby he's maintaining the coolness of that cold water on a hot summer's day. Says the Gemara, Amar Rav Yehuda Mar Shmuel, Muter lahatmin es hatzoinen. It's permissible to insulate a cold dish. Ask the Gemara right away, Amar Rav Yosef, my kamash malon. What are you coming to teach us? Tanina, we just learned this in the Mishnah. Memale adam kitoin v'noisin tachas hakar or tachas hakeses. A person can fill up a flask of water and he's able to then put it inside, let's say, a pillowcase that has felt in it. So therefore, you're allowed to insulate something that is cold. Omar le Abaye tuva kamash malon. Abaye says he's coming to teach us something very, very big over here. For if we only had the Mishnah alone, which is talking about cold water, I might think to say that's only something that a person doesn't normally heat up. It doesn't become significant when he insulates something cold, just to maintain that it doesn't get hot. In other words, when it comes to water, it's not significant to be insulating it. So therefore, when I take something cold, like a cold water, and I insulate it to maintain its coolness, it's also not going to be a problem, and therefore the Chum, we're not goizer. But something that normally is insulated, like food, whereby it's significant to make it a little bit warmer, or maintain its heat, thereby when it comes to something that's cold, just to maintain that it remains room temperature and doesn't get hotter, doesn't get a little bit warmer, then I would think that it's also included in the gzeira, and I cannot do that. Kamash malan, when it comes to a cold room temperature type of dish, that I also am able to be matmin. I'm able to then put it in, let's say, felt, if I needed to, just in order to then maintain its room temperature and not get heated up or cooled off, depending on the situation. Rav Huna says in the Rav, and over here the Girsa is changed to Rebbe, that Rav Huna said in the name of Rebbe that it's asur, it's prohibited to insulate a cold dish, not like we just said before. The Gemara asks, V'hatanya, Rebbe hitir lahatmin es hatzoin. We have a brisa that says otherwise in the name of Rebbe, that he himself said that you could, yes, be insulating a cold dish. So there's a stira in Rebbe. Did he say it's asur to insulate a cold dish, or is it mutter? Lokasha says the Gemara, it's not difficult. This is before he heard the words of Rabbi Yishmael, Rabbi Yossi. And this is after he heard the words of Rabbi. In other words, when he didn't yet hear the words of Rabbi Yishmael in the name of Rabbi Yossi, then he said it was asur to insulate a cold dish. But once he heard Rabbi Yossi saying, in the name of Rabbi Yossi saying that indeed it is mutter, then he was makabel. Kihod Yossi Rebbe. The Gemara tells that when Rebbe sat down, and he says, asur lahatmin es hatzoinen, he declared that it's asur, prohibited to insulate a cold dish. Omar lefon Rabbi Yishmael, Rabbi Yossi. That Rabbi Yishmael then said of Rabbi Yossi at that point, my father Rabbi Yossi was matir to insulate a cold dish. Omar, then Rabbi said, Kvar hare zoking. Did Rabbi Yossi already then give a hara, indeed, to be matir to insulate a cold dish? Then he was mekabel this that he heard in the name of Rabbi Yossi. Now the Gemara comments, Omra papa ba urei kama mechabin ze'eze. Come and see how much each sage, Rebbe and Rabbi Yossi, are mechabev, cherish and are mechabed each other. She'ilu Rabbi Yossi kayim. If Rabbi Yossi was alive, hayakafu v'yoshev v'nei Rebbe, he would be submissive to that of Rebbe, even though Rabbi Yossi was a greater sage in terms of his halachic knowledge. He wouldn't pass him before Rebbe because Rebbe was the Nasi. So he had great respect for Rebbe. The Rabbi Yishmael, Rabbi Yossi, the Memale Mokom Avoisav. Rabbi Yishmael, the son of Rabbi Yossi, who was an equal to his father, have a kafuf, he would sit submissively before Rebbe. And therefore the implication is that his father, Rebbe Yossi, would have done the same. And still, Rebbe says, Kvar hare zokein. Did Rebbe Yossi already give a ruling, a psak halacha that is mutter to insulate a kol dish, whereby Rebbe was mekabel. So you see that each one was mechabed, had tremendous respect for the other. Gemara now recounts, Omar le Rav Nachman le Daroi Avdei. Rav Nachman said to his servant Daroi, Atmin litzoinen. He first said to him, I want you to insulate for me a cold dish. It was on Shabbos. And he also said to him, independently, Va'aisi li maya da'achim kapila da'admo, armo. And he said to me, bring me water that was heated up by an Aramite cook, by a goy. Shoma Rabbi Ami v'ikbid. Rabbi Ami heard this and he was very upset that Rav Nachman told his servant to do these two things. One, again, to insulate a cold dish, and two, to bring him hot water that was heated up by a goy. On Rav Yosef, my time ikbid. Rav Yosef says, why was Rav Ami makbid? Why was he so upset at Rav Nachman? Harei kirav avosei ovid. Rav Nachman did like his rabbeim. Chada kirav v'chada kishmuel. One he did like Rav, and one he did like Shmuel. Kishmuel da'amar Rav Yehuda amar Shmuel. Mutter lahat min asatzoinem. Like we learned above that Shmuel paskin, that it's mutter, it's permissible to insulate a cold dish. So Rav Nachman was just doing the same as his Rebbe. Kirav, he followed like the opinion of Rav, his other Rebbe. The Omar Rav, Shmuel bar Rav, Yitzchok Omar Rav, Koshehu nechal kemoshehu, anything that is eaten the way it is meant to be eaten, meaning to say that you don't have to then heat it up. It's edible raw before even cooking it. Then shehu chai eino boy mishum bishul nochri. If a person can eat something when it is raw, then is not considered to be an iser bishul akum. If a nochri, if a goy heats it up, by him cooking it, he's not making it now edible because it's edible before, and therefore it's not under the prohibition, the gezeros chachamim of bishul akum. So what was the reason why Rav Ami was ikbid? Adam chashuv shiny. He held that an Adam chashuv is different. When you have somebody who's an Adam chashuv and he's doing a kula, others will then see that this Adam chashuv is doing a kula and they'll be more mekil. So therefore, Rav Ami was makbid, and he was upset when he saw Rav Nachman doing these two things. The Gemara now brings the following brayso tanu Rabbana. Afa pisha amru ein toimlin afilu b'davar she'eino moisif hevel mishecha shecha. Even though the Chacham said that you're not allowed to be toimlin, something that is not moisif hevel on Shabbos. However, if you did already matmin a davar she'eino moisif hevel before Shabbos, and you want to then add or even replace that insulation, you're able to do so. Of course, only with something that's not moisif hevel. Ketzad hu oiseh, the Brisa goes on to say, what does he do? Rabbi Shimon Gamliel oimer noiteles hasadinin umenichas gloifkerim. He can take off the sheet and add a top cover. Or noiteles haglufkerin umenichas hasadinin. Or he can take off the top cover and then add, he can put hasadini, he can put sheets. In other words, not only can he then take off the same thing, but he can even take off and put on something else. And we don't say that it's considered to be as if he's now insulating anew. And the Brisa goes on to say that Rishon Gamliel also gave another kula. This is only prohibited in terms of insulating when it's the same pot. But if a person were to take a pot and then empty the contents and put into another pot and then insulate, that would be mutter, says Rabbi Shimon Gamliel. Why? The Gemara explains. Now that he's coming to then cool off the food contents by pouring it from one pot to another pot, that cools it off. So then, are we going to be concerned that he's going to then make it hotter by insulating it, the whole chashash of insulating on Shabbos is shema yartiach. If he sees that the pot is cold, he might come to then reheat it. But if he does an action, in this case, by pouring to another pot, clearly he's not interested in becoming hot. He wants to even cool it off. So therefore, if he then puts an insulation on top of it, he just wants to maintain whatever heat it is at. He's not considered to be interested in then reheating something anew and making it hotter. The Gemara now goes on to say, continuing on the brayso that was quoted before, Toman v'kiso b'davar nitel b'Shabbos. A person who insulated and then covered something that is not muktzah, you can take on Shabbos. Or Toman b'davar she'enot nitel b'Shabbos v'kiso b'davar nitel b'Shabbos. Or he insulated something that is prohibited to move on Shabbos because it's muktzah, but he covered it with something that is not muktzah. So the din is, says the brayso, he can take off by taking off the kisui, the cover, and machzir by taking off whatever part is not muktzah. However, if he insulated and covered something that both are muktzah and cannot be moved on Shabbos, or he insulated with a pot, with something that was around a pot that is not movable on Shabbos because it's muktzah, but he covered it with something he insulated with a pot with insulation around the pot that is movable on Shabbos, but he covered it with something that's not movable on Shabbos because it's muktzah, then imhaya magula miktzah sonotul machzir. If part of the covering was revealed, then he can take that part and then pick up the covering with that without moving muktzah. Then he could do so and can take it and put it back. The imlav, however, if whatever he would be touching and moving would be muktzah, then eino noitel umachzir. The brayso says he's not able to then take and put back. The brayso continues quoting Rabbi Yehuda Omer Ne'ora Shel Pishtan Daka Harei Hu Kizevel. This we learned before. The Gemara on Daf Mem Tes Amud Aleph taught us that indeed the Gemara had a suffix. What is Rabbi Yehuda coming to say when he says Ne'ora Shel Pishtan Daka is Aser? The Gemara conclude over there, like it says over here as well, that's going on that which the Tana Kama talks about Ne'ora Shel Pishtan Daka, that is Aser because that's Moisif Hevel according to Rabbi Yehuda. Only if it's Pishtan that is Gasa, then it is permissible. Then it's not Moisif Hevel. What is the Ne'ora Shel Pishtan? This is that we take the Pishtan, the flax that would grow in a plant around a wooden type of covering, and they would normally soak the flax to then weaken and soften this wooden covering, and then afterwards we saw they would take it out and then they would beat this flax so that the wooden covering would then come off, and then they would comb the flax rather, and only small little wooden pieces or bigger wooden pieces would come off. So the smaller wooden pieces, the pishtan daka, that he says is like the zevel, whereby it is moisif hevel, and you cannot be matmin, you cannot insulate your pot with that. Only if the bigger pieces, which are not moisif hevel, can be used. The brayso continues, menichim meicham al gabe meicham, v'kidei al gabe kidei. You can take a kettle and put it on top of another kettle, or you can take a pot and put it on top of another pot. But you can't take a pot and put it on top of a kettle. You can't put a kettle on top of a pot. If you have botzek that's prepared before Shabbos, you can go ahead and cover the mouth of the kettle or the pot with that botzek. However, the brayso continues and says, not so that you're heating it, but rather just to maintain its heat. And this opinion holds differently than we saw before, that just like you can't be matmin, you can't go ahead and insulate a hot dish, you cannot also insulate a cold dish. Rabbi hitir lahat min hatzon. However, Rabbi, this is after, of course, he heard b'shem Rabbi Yosef, like we pointed out before. He said it's mutter to then be matmin a cold dish. The Brisa continues on another halacha that has nothing to do with what we were discussing of Hatmana before, and talks about now a new issue. Vein marzikin los hasheleg v'los haborad b'Shabbos b'shir sheyazuva b'yemov. You're not allowed to crush snow or ice on Shabbos, because then it appears to be that you're creating something anew, an issue of noilad. But you can put it into your cup, and then you can have your drink, and even if before the drink comes, it comes a little bit then melted, it's not considered to be a problem. Hadron aloch bameh toimlim.